So one of them was paraquat, and that's what we're going to talk about. Yes, I read about paraquat, and I have no reason to use it. I grow over 100 acres of vegetables and berries, and when I spray something, I would like it dead. I don't want it coming back up again because I don't want to keep on repeating what I'm doing. But paraquat does have a use for certain farmers. But they have, paraquat also, I think you know that every 3 years, they have to, besides the 5 years to renew their license, every 3 years, they have to take, what I'm told, a test. And they have to get 100%. If not, that's bad. All these chemicals, paraquat, Roundup, Strategy, whatever, is considered a pesticide or herbicide or a fungicide or a raticide, one of the 4 sides of the world. You need to have a license to buy it. And I asked Northeast Ag, which was Northeast Ag, now it's United Ag and Turf in Lindenville. They haven't sold it in 2 or 3 years. I think 3 years ago they sold 1 canister. That was it. I know other places, Addison, they use it, but up here we don't. What else? California, I read about California. Well, first of all, paraquat is not a cancerous substance. It's not a carcinogen. And they have over 3 million acres of fruit and nut trees, which they band spray around it, or they call it buffering. They spray around the drip line of the tree, burn down the grass, and then it starts to grow back up again. When it grows up, that's when they harvest or whatever. Things fall on the grass, they can pick them up. Paraquat has a very short residual. But I guess you guys know all that. What I'm concerned about is, how can I put this? When you were young and dating, you started holding hands. Okay, fine. But sooner or later, you got married, had kids. I don't want this whole thing about chemicals getting to that stage. I'd rather see you, if possible, have paraquat put on their label. This substance might cause different diseases, like they do on medicines that you take. If you read the label, if you read the package, the flyer that comes with your medicine, you might go, oh my God, I'm going to go blind, I'm going to go this, I'm going to have to. It's really scary, but it's your choice to use it. It's your choice to use these drugs. We take tests. We continuously take tests as sprayers in the state of Vermont. Why can't you make up our minds if we want to use it? You'd like to say something, it's used properly. Yes, and one of the questions on the test, how often should you read the label? Once when you start using it, once a year, or every time you use it? The answer is every time you use it, that you should read it. Because maybe you made a mistake in the past. Oh God, I thought it was this. So you don't continue doing the wrong thing. After a while, I read that label on certain things hundreds of times. But also maybe you changed the label. They changed it. So, like I watched the news last night, I saw a reporter, Cynthia Thomas, she says, paraquat is an insecticide. No, it's not. It's a herbicide. It was on my phone. It was a blog. And then some guy puts out there, Roundup has paraquat in it. No, it doesn't. Matter of fact, Roundup is a warning. It's warning, caution, hazardous. Those are the 3 categories. Warning, you can buy it at Bagway, you can buy it at Tractor Supply. And if people are already starting to boil up about chemicals. I'd love to stop using any kind of chemicals, but could you stop any kind of bug or disease, or fungicide or fungus coming in to ruin my crops? That would be great. But it's the way we combat new stuff coming in on what we grow. So I guess that's about it. Any questions?
Richie, thank you. Richard Nelson, Representative Nelson has a question.
Yeah. Hey, Richie, I think you misspoke when you said the only place you can buy paraquat. It used to be Northeast Agriculture. It's now Nutrien up there in Lindenville. Yeah, it's at Nutrien. I think you referred to it as United Ag and Turf. And anyway, and
Yes.
we do not, we have zero authority, and you probably know this, but we have zero authority to change any label on any EPA registered pesticide. We can affect how the state of Vermont allows it to be used. So we could request that they apply for a special permit to use paraquat. We could say you can't use it on certain crops, but we certainly don't have the authority to try to change the label. We'd end up in court and on the wrong end of that deal. So I just wanted to let you know about that. And I'm with you. We got to keep the tools in the toolbox as much as we can, so we can effectively raise food for the whole world. And and geez, if they let us make a nickel, we're doing good. Thank you.
Well, just a word of FYI. Total percentage of people in the United States who grows food for the rest of the 98% is 2% of the people, 2% of us grow food for the other 98. The average age is 68. And I'm 77, so I'll be walking out the door pretty soon. I won't be here no more. But I don't see too many people coming up behind it. Well, that's not true. I went to the Vermont Veggie and Berry Association. Thank God it was not all gray hairs there. There were young people there. You got one guy, Greg, I really admire that kid. I will show him and train him. I'll teach him anything I know.
So, are you talking about me? Oh. I'm starting to get gray hairs though, Richard.
I'm getting off the subject. But it's just, let's keep, like you said, let's keep all the tools in the toolbox. Can we keep the information going out to the public correct? There is no paraquat in Roundup. Paraquat is a herbicide, not an insecticide. And the only good thing about all this publicity and before this is I spray my fields and I put plaques out for people, where the roads to go in. And I notice that when we spray, put plaques out, we don't find people running in and out of the fields with crops. It's like, what are you doing? Well, I thought they were free. No, they're not free. So more or less now we have a hard time taking them down, especially when the corn is ripe. Maybe leave them up there 2 or 3 days later, and we keep the people up. So people are really scared about chemicals. So we keep the signs up and they don't go in. But anyways, I'm getting off the subject again.
Well, sometimes the side conversations, the diversions are just as interesting as the original conversation. I don't know. Does anybody else have a question for Richie? And Richie, thank you very much for your persistence and your patience in joining us today. And I know it was a challenge, a technical challenge. So thanks for bearing with it.
I mean, after this, the only thing we had was 2 cans of the strong.
All right. Yes. Yes. Same group.
All right. I'll sign off. I think I've been about long enough. There must be all there really do from the chemicals make me talk too much.
All right. Be well.
Yeah, please keep the lock.
Yeah. Take care.
Thanks, Richard.
Yeah, bye.
All right. Patricia, thank you for that.
First. Yeah. It works.
Well, now we know that, if we need to, we can, maybe we have the phone a little closer to the TV so that, to the screen. So, yeah. Well,
I heard the
Amber.
whole thing. It was perfect.
Okay, good. Yes.
Well, I will say, in addition to his comments, he sells to, I believe it's Shaw's mostly, and from other conversations I have with Richard, it's an extremely stringent criteria that they have for what he can sell to them. And I've heard of, you could have entire loads rejected. And you have to, if it goes to a warehouse down in Massachusetts and they reject it, you have to pay to get it out of there.
Mm.
And it's not, not unheard of for a whole load to be rejected.
What would be the grounds for what they would reject things for?
I don't know exactly, but I do know it's, you have pretty much everything has to be perfect when it shows up there. So it's different. That's where you start to talk about having all the tools in the toolbox. If it means a crop failure, and it's one thing that you could use one time to get that crop through. And
Yeah.
I think we're hearing over and over the amount that the near perfection that's required for wholesale producers everywhere in the country.
Have a product that is saleable.
Yes, what the large grocery store chains are looking for in terms of qualities, the standard is so extremely high.
Yeah.
That it's hard not to use every tool that's out there to, because you think of an entire growing season process. You start, and it even starts in planting in the winter, right? Then you get the seeds in the ground and you hope for the right weather for all of that. And then you get into the middle of summer and then there's one bug that's going to be the make or break for that crop that's on an entire, if you got 100 acres of crop, that's where the rubber starts to meet the road in those situations. And it's not just like crop failure, it's one little speck of blemish on the outside of the produce that's going to kill your ability to sell that thing. And there's no crop insurance for those things.
Yeah.
It's considered you as the grower are obligated to take care of that crop the right way in order to get it to market. If it's not weather related, it's on you.
Forgotten that he had come in about Salvation Farms in the past, and it sounds like he's used to having to take products that the grocery stores won't take.
There are a lot of,
Diverting.
especially for wholesale farmers, there ends up being a lot of crop that doesn't meet the standard.
Yeah.
So, and it's perfectly good in every other respect. It just won't meet the standards that the large grocery store chains are looking for. And the reason why I am sorry I hope this is
No,
informative.
it's all part of the mix.
The reason why I like to do direct as possible to consumer is because there tends the more chains you go through to get to the consumer, where they're going through a distributor, going through a warehouse, going through a grocery store chain. If your stuff goes to a warehouse in Pennsylvania and then it gets shipped to a store in New Jersey, right? The further the farmer is from the customer, the less trust there is between the customer and the farmer. And that looks like, to me, there's more ability for that produce to lose quality along the way, right?
Yeah.
We all know that. If the fruit can go from out of the garden and onto the plate, the better. But the system is set up where that's not always straightforward. And so, and on the customer end, when you're purchasing, if somebody sees a blemish on an apple hanging on a tree in my orchard, they know, oh, well, that somehow happened out here in the orchard, and it's a natural something that happened out here in the orchard, right? But if you take that same apple and you try to sell it in New York City, well, how did that happen? Did it happen in storage? Did it happen in transport? You don't know that, oh, that's something that naturally occurs out in the orchard. So the more steps removed it is, that's why the produce has to be perfect when you wholesale. or else it's not gonna sell. Or it's worth way less per pound.
Yeah.
So that's where the rubber meets the road on these things. Growers are relying on every tool they have to ensure that they have a crop that they get the full amount of money for. And in most cases, it's either you get the full amount or it gets rejected. So you get all or nothing.
Thank God for cider, right?
But you're looking at getting $4 a bushel for your fruit going to cider versus, 60.
Wow.
That is the difference.
Wow.
You're just giving it away at $4 a
Right.
bushel.
That's chipboard versus.
Exactly. Veneer, yeah.
Yeah.
Nishant?
So, yeah, I just wanted to ask a question. I mean, can I ask a question to
Sure.
Representative Burke? So, in talking about paraquat though, paraquat isn't about getting pristine apples. It's about growing the trees, right? So paraquat isn't really a tool that would be utilized to develop perfect fruit to go to market, right?
Correct.
So you're just talking sort of in general about there's certain pesticides that are important.
It's more of a general talking about.
Right, okay, so,
The
yeah,
tools that a farmer can
Okay.
get. Though.
okay, so,
And so there's the worry is there among farmers that when another chemical bill is on the wall, what's the next? What's the
Yeah,
next?
I heard that in his, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So
And that's,
I'm trying to address where that's coming from.
okay, yeah, no, that's helpful to have the full picture. I just wanted to make sure I understood, because I hadn't heard about it being used as a finished product.
Richard, and then we should bring Amber up, who's been waiting patiently.
All right, no, thank you. When I said earlier, if the farmer gets to make a nickel, it's a good year. And I meant that. And we use the tools in our toolbox to efficiently make a crop. And like Greg said, the further you get away from the consumer, the more they want everything to look the same. They expect every apple to be, like a delicious apple. They want that little 4-prong on the bottom and to go up a little bit rounded on top. And they want every one of those red delicious apples to look the same. They want every butternut squash to look the same. And hell, butternut squash, they're all different sizes, but they want everyone to look the same. And the Salvation Farms, I think it's a great program. Those farmers don't make a nickel off Salvation Farms. They get their fields gleaned. It serves a purpose. It's great. I support it. And the farmers that do this practice support it. But really, and it goes to a population that needs that food at a reduced rate. But the farmers would be better off if they plowed that crop into the ground, because then it removes it from the market and makes their perfect fruit worth that much more. And that's just the short and sweet of it is. I mean, the companies we work with, they'll let us make a nickel, but they get upset if we make 50 cents. And that's commercial agriculture, and it's cutthroat. And that's why I champion all farmers. If they can make a living, and the people doing it organically, if they can make a living and they got a market and the farmers markets and everything else, that's great. But I'll tell you, most of us farmers could get our health care on Medicaid, because we sure don't make enough to get in anywhere else. All right, over and out.
Thank you, Richard. All right, we will continue that conversation later and have Amber come up to the table. Morning, Amber.
Good morning, Amber Perry, Vermont Farm Bureau, here to talk with the committee about H403, which is your ag labor bill. About a year ago, we decided to survey our members just to get an idea of where they are with paying their farm employees. So I'm gonna share those responses with you today. We asked them like, what size is your farm? So 50% of the members responded that they're currently operating a certified small farm. 20% responded that they were a medium farm, while 10% were just large farms. And 15% responded that they were under the threshold of a certified small farm, and 5% operated a small equine farm. So then the responses we received back from our members are just as diverse as the farms here in Vermont. We had dairy farmers, crop farmers, beef farmers, vegetable farmers, maple farmers, equine farmers, apple farmers, custom ag and heifer boarding farmers, poultry farmers, egg production farmers, as well as berry farmers. 100% of our members that responded to the survey responded that they currently employ non-family members. And of those employees, let me see, I lost my place. The highest number of employees in response was they employed 21 employees. And some were a combination of seasonal, full-time, part-time, and other were a combination of the previous combinations, but also included some family members. So then we dug a little deeper and we asked our members how many of them were paying at least minimum wage. And 75% responded that they were indeed at least paying that minimum wage threshold. We also surveyed members on the overtime wages. And we learned that currently 20% were paying some form of overtime, while other members were not because their employees didn't work over 40 hours per week. And then,
Amber, how many respondents again? I missed it.
don't remember because we did it over a year ago. I can check in with
percentage
staff.
don't have overtime? Is it 80%, the full 80% that's left don't?
Let me see. 75% responded that they were indeed paying them at least minimum wage.
No, about the overtime.
20% were paying some form of overtime.
And then what?
80% would be the,
So nobody was having people work overtime and not paying them overtime.
And we also learned that some of our members were offering benefits that might compensate for overtime. We decided to dig into what our members were currently doing in form of raises. 85% currently offered raises in some form,
Sorry, I just want to ask about the overtime thing. I just find that astonishing because if I think about dairy farms, almost everybody's going to be working more than 40 hours.
let me get.
And I know people that have crop farms in the summer, the ones in my area all work over 40
So
hours.
we surveyed our members on overtime wages. We learned that 20% were paying some form of overtime,
Yeah,
while the other members were not because their employees did not work over the 40. So out of the responses, 20% were paying, and then
and 80% said they never use overtime.
some were not,
So some people.
and some weren't even making
So
that
some
40 hours.
farmers
So it's-
haven't responded then because
some might have left that box.
that's just
behind.
weird. Yeah, that I find that I mean, don't you guys find it surprising that?
I mean, I think so it sounds like the sample included some large,
There was,
possibly
right.
dairy farms.
There was, I think because of when you go back to who we surveyed,
Yeah.
there was 50% were the certified small farms that probably aren't offering that
Right.
40 hours a week.
Right,
So they wouldn't, right?
Yeah.
And there was only 10% operate a large farm.
Oh.
Greg.
Yes, go ahead.
I think what I'm hearing is 80% either don't pay overtime or don't have people who work enough hours to receive overtime. Does that make
Okay,
sense?
I didn't hear the first part. I mean, I heard her say they don't have their people work overtime, but
Well,
you're
our
saying they
members-
don't pay it?
They might not reach that overtime threshold of over 40 hours.
Right, so I feel like you guys are saying different things. So.
Why don't we
That's right.
why don't we go on and we'll,
I mean, one of the issues in the bill is about paying overtime, and I think
Yeah.
from
I
what
have a
we've.
whole nother section
Okay,
on
all
overtime.
right,
We'll
keep
get
going.
there.
I'll get more notes later.
Let's see now that I lost my train of thought. We're on raises, correct?
We were.
10% of our members are currently not offering any raises, 30% offer a raise yearly, and the other 30% offer raises when the farm income allows. 20% offer raises based on performance, 5% offer yearly bonuses as deserved. And we also found that our members are also offering a variety of other benefits to their employees, from housing, utilities, phone, transportation, food, groceries, clothing, learning opportunities, sick time, vacation time, to even retirement. So the struggle to find reliable employees has also taken a toll on the farmers. Most of our members shared that they have struggled to find help. 55% find a significant trouble to find good help. 25% said it was somewhat of a struggle. 10% said they've had no struggle at all. 5% said they struggle to find quality employees. And then 5% said that the struggle was so bad that they've switched to H2A workers. So that would probably not be your dairy farms. We also provided a comment section. And some shared that paying overtime potentially would put me out of business or significantly change my business negatively. Some said, I know it's difficult to hire and maintain employees. We are small and we don't need too many people to help us out. For larger firms, this is really going to be an ongoing issue. Just trying to find another one. We pay full-time employees $15 to $17 an hour plus housing and still struggle to find reliable labor. Most stay with us for about 6 months to a year and then move on. As farm owners, we get no days off and we don't draw a paycheck. We need to consider that capacity with our farm owners. If we can't afford to find labor, the job still needs to get done and it's just going to fall back to the farmer. We pay higher than minimum wage as it is expected, and we would not be able to have employees without compensation. That's market driven. So basically, because there's a lack of help, they have to pay higher than that minimum wage. So back in 2016, the state of California passed AB 1066. The bill would decrease the current, it did like a scaled system for overtime, and everyone thought it was going to work out wonderfully. And according to our sister Farm Bureau in California, when they went back to check in on farm workers, they learned that it worked negatively. The farmers then capped the employees at 40 hours, and farm workers were taking on 2 to 3 jobs just to compensate that missed income from working over 40 hours. And I believe last year, California was looking at legislation to somehow fix what they had done in 2016 because of the impact it was taking on ag in California. In the last 5 years, Vermont has lost 32% of its farmers. Farmers are faced with high input costs and low commodity prices. To put it simple, farmers are not being paid enough for the food that they grow to feed our state. Moving forward with the requirement to pay overtime wages will only add another burden to our farmers. And then you also have within that bill, there's that survey. So we looked at that. It seems targeted at MFOs and LFOs, and if the committee was moving forward with that language, we would suggest that it's open to all farms that offer farm worker housing, not just MFOs and LFOs. And that's all I have. Thank you. Tried to get it in.
So flagging the overtime question, and I think maybe we could just come back to that later, and yeah, it's okay to leave the door open if you want. Yeah. Any other questions for Amber? Representative Bricker.
When you're talking about 80% didn't pay overtime. But like when I was milking cows, they had shifts if you milk 3 times a day. And so that they weren't getting to the point where they'd have to be paid overtime. And if somebody didn't show up or they had Christmas, we give Christmas or holidays off, we did.
Yeah.
And the help got it off.
Representative O'Brien.
Amber, what was your statistic on the amount of farmers in Vermont who stopped farming? Was 30-some%?
We lost, I think, 32%. We pulled this together a year ago, so that could be even higher.
So that's
32%. And I think I got that from
respondents
the,
or from,
that's just in general in Vermont.
In what time period?
I pulled it from the ag agency. I would have to check, but I'm just saying in the last 5 years. So if this was last year,
so if we have, say, 6,000 some farmers, 2,000 stopped farming?
that would be it, but I don't think we have 6,000. Is it 6,000?
That's what we've heard, I think, from NOFA
Okay.
and agency.
So
Yes,
that's kind of the sense from 2020. Thank you, Carolyn.
That's a trouble.
I'm just gonna mention here, and then we're taking more testimony this afternoon on this bill. But there's been some confusion about our current minimum wage laws, generally speaking, across all sectors and whether they apply to students. And I think we heard testimony last time we brought this bill up that no, students aren't treated any differently. But further investigation reveals that, in fact, there is statute that says, generally speaking, students are not considered for the purposes of minimum wage, are not considered required to get minimum wage. So we should just be aware of that when we're continuing the discussion. And I don't know, in the case of farm workers, how many of them might be students. And of course, it's going to be different for every farm and maybe different for the types of farming too. Richard, Representative
Yeah,
Nelson.
thank you, Chair. Reading that bulletin we got on students and minimum wage, and then the requirements for students. Kids that work in agriculture, they do it, and because ag is exempt, those kids can, well, they can have a lot of fun because they run big equipment and they work a lot of hours if they want to. And if agriculture has to follow the same rules, it's really going to change students working on farms, kids working on farms, unless the kid happens to be a family member of the farmer. You read that statute, and I looked at it and applied it to our farm, and I'm like, holy cow, my high school kids aren't going to have fun anymore. So anyways, that's
So
it.
yeah, just again, I reemphasize that, and I think what we read, it's not the whole picture. In fact, the current law says high school students, and this is in any job, an employer does not have to pay the minimum wage. And what we know in the reality is that very few people are going to work for less than minimum wage in the current economy. But we'll leave that for now, because we've got a bunch of other folks who are gathered and looking forward to speaking to us on Small Farm Action Day. So welcome, everybody. And Caroline, your name's at the top of the list. Do you want to come up and thank you, Amber?
Thank you.
Hi, everybody. Just for the record, Caroline Sherman Gordon, Legislative Director of Rural Vermont. Nice to meet you, Representative. Want to keep it very brief. Thank you all so much for having us. I know we're at the close to the 12 o'clock mark here in our first half of the legislative session. So making an hour to hear from a diverse group of people on a number of different issues is a big chunk of a very valuable time. So thank you so much for making that time. Small Farm Action Day is a format we organize every year in collaboration with both ag committees, where Rural Vermont brings in members to talk about whatever they want to talk about with you, really. Like, we don't prescribe what they're bringing forward to you. They often choose to speak to the priority issues we're already collaborating on with the committees. But it's really up to them to express their own stories and what they find important telling you today. So without further ado, I'm going to pass it on first to our board chair, Miriam.
While you're getting seated, go ahead and thank you for joining us. We're starting a little late, so we'll have a full hour. And I think we've got 6 folks who want to speak, so.
Yeah, I think we have 2 on the screen, and then we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I think we have 1 extra.
Okay, so I'll keep an eye on the clock if you'd like, but figure like 8 or 9 minutes.
Absolutely.
Okay, and I may cut off the committee too if questions get too long.
Thank you. My name's Maria Merriam. I live in Stratford. And as Carolyn said, I'm the chair of the Rural Vermont Board. And I'm here to talk about an amendment proposal to Section 5 of the miscellaneous tax bill. And this is language that came out of Ways and Means that Rural Vermont is sort of concerned about. And I'm sort of testifying from the perspective of from rural Vermont, but also I'm a farm worker who works on a dairy farm that relies on leased land. I'm a young farmer who's concerned about land access. And my housemate and I have 14 acres enrolled in current use for both pasture and hayfield. So recently there were changes to Section 5 of the 2026 miscellaneous tax bill that were introduced to clarify that any land used for grazing should qualify for current use. Rural Vermont supports this intent, but because of how the language is written, we're concerned that it's going to incentivize landowners to charge high lease fees for access to their land when these landowners already receive tax breaks for enrolling in current use. So we recommend amending Section 5 to clarify that it's farmers who should earn the annual gross income of at least $2,000 for parcels under 25 acres, and that the farmer-generated income should not be confused with lease fees. So this would keep changes more in line with the original intent of current use, in which land that is used by farmers but not owned by them is considered used for agricultural purposes if it's the farmer, if it's by a farmer, if it's part of the farmer's operation, and if the farmer has access to the land under a written lease fee for at least 3 years, or if the farmer is making income from their production on the land of at least $2,000. The changes in Section 5 make the assumption that someone who's selling grazing rights on a per head basis and makes at least $2,000 on parcels of up to 25 acres, $75 on any additional acre, is considered equivalent to a farmer, despite the fact that they do not labor or steward the land. So this encourages landowners to charge a high lease fee instead of writing a 3-year lease. I both work on a dairy farm, and I have land that same dairy farm uses to pasture dry cows, which I have in current use. It's very clear to me the difference between being a farmer and having land in current use. When I work at the dairy farm, I'm setting up fencing, moving animals, monitoring their health, assessing pasture quality, making sure everyone's well fed. And as someone managing land in current use, I don't do any of that. I make sure the land's available, I communicate with the farmer, I sign a lease. It's absolutely worth it to me because I get to see this land stewarded and improved through grazing. And I'm increasing the pasture base available to a farm in my community. And the current use program makes holding on to that open 14 acres of pasture worth it, and it incentivizes me to keep it in agriculture. Current use helps protect land access for farmers by lowering their tax burden and incentivizing landowners to offer up unused land for farm management. The greatest challenge for young farmers and farm workers looking to get into farming is absolutely land access. I personally would be unable to farm for myself if it weren't for access to my parents' land, as the land I live on is too rocky for vegetable farming. And all the viable land near me is far beyond the economic reach of someone making $40,000 a year. So if we want to keep young people in the state, if we want to make it possible for them to farm, they need to be able to afford land access to pursue a high capital, low profit endeavor. Incentivizing landowners to ask for a $2,000 lease fee instead of a 3-year lease will only make land less affordable and less accessible. Current use doesn't exclude landowners from charging a lease fee, but we don't need to encourage it. I, along with rural Vermont, strongly encourage and respectfully submit a change to subsection C to clarify that land is eligible for the current use tax reduction if, and this is the change language, it is used by a farmer who has produced an annual gross income from the sale of farm crops or grazing of at least $2,000. This preserves the intent of current use to recognize the labor of farmers as stewards of the land, while avoiding encouraging landowners to charge them improbably high lease fees for access to land under current use. So thank you so much. Happy to answer any questions about this.
Thank you, Mark. So just for the committee's
Yeah.
recollection, we had testimony from the tax department,
Yes.
and then I'm just reminding the committee.
Oh, yeah. Sorry. I was like, I also watched that.
I need the public too. Forget sometimes that people do watch and stuff. We then had the agency come in and speak to this a little bit, and then we took a vote and we sent it off to the Ways and Means. And we let the Ways and Means Committee know that we had considered and voted. And then Rural Vermont reached out to me, Caroline, flagging this and noting the concern that we've just heard, and making a valid observation, I think, that there was perhaps a misinterpretation happening here that we were overlooking. The intent, you might remember, was to equate in some way grazing and haying. And the way it was presented to us was, right now, you get you can be eligible for current use if you let a farmer hay. And what's the difference between that and having the farmer bring, animals on to graze? In fact, I think there is something else going on here. And I believe that you've reached out to the Ways and Means Department. I spoke to the committee, rather. I spoke to them and shared your concern last week. And I think that they responded within the past 24 hours to you. So hopefully this is on their radar, and we'll make sure that they know you came in and spoke to us again today. So I just wanted to throw that out there. I don't know that we need to have a long debate about it, but in the interests of.
Just wanted to say goodbye.
Goodbye, thank you. In the interest of making sure that we hear from everyone, I don't want to have too much time sucked up by this issue, which we have heard anyway. Yeah. Having said that, if anybody does have a question you want to get clarified on, we can do that before we move on. Yeah, great.
This is more a question to you, Chair. What's going to be the process then going forward with Ways and Means, and would that come back to our committee?
Yeah, possibly. Yeah, I think so. This is in a miscellaneous bill that has got, I'm guessing, dozens, if not, closer to hundreds of little tiny things. And they may be perfectly comfortable having me say we're okay with this. Speaking on behalf of the committee, we can also, if the committee would prefer, we can have tax department come back in. I'm going to speak to the tax department too, just to see what their thoughts are now. And they may end up just withdrawing at this point. I don't know what their preference would be. Yes.
With that, I thought maybe the people in the room could testify first.
Okay.
So if we just go around, and Sarah, you could go next.
Morning.
Morning.
It's a pleasure to be here. Good to meet you all.
Yes. Have you been here before?
I recently testified in Senate Ag about 3 weeks ago, but I've not been in House Ag, so I'm really happy to be here.
Okay, good. Yeah, you don't look familiar, but sometimes people don't look familiar, and it turns out, we were here last year. So
Yeah, and it's sometimes hard with the mask and stuff to really recognize folks.
I'm glad you could join us.
Yeah, thank you so much. So for the record, my name is Saren Dias. I'm a rural Vermont board member, a farmer, and an educator in Newfane, Vermont. So as I said, I recently gave testimony in Senate Ag for food resilience at 3 Squares Vermont Day. And during that testimony, I was briefly asked about municipal exemption. And it seemed like full testimony on that particular subject was due. So to start, towns simply don't have the expertise or capacity to oversee agricultural operations. Furthermore, opening farms up to scrutiny based on unneighborly discord or disagreements, which is in part how we lost the farmer exemption in the first place, is a wild act of agricultural endangerment that will divert critical time and resources, both for towns, farms, and the relevant agencies that regulate us. When my farm, Giant Journey Farm, first started out, our neighbors were unhappy about the increased traffic on our private road and a bunch of other like little picadillos. Someone called the town with several specious claims to have an EPA rep come. When someone from the town arrived, he was clear that there was no issue with what we were doing. When I expressed surprise that Newfane had its own EPA rep, he told me that he was actually an accountant. He had absolutely no qualification whatsoever to assess our operation. We quickly decided to file a Schedule F and to register as an LLC with the state so that we could both be sure that we had access to expertise about regulatory compliance and that we would be protected from future petty grievance. In those first years, we went from making under $600 a year to just over $2,000, but our income was extremely variable based on large but necessary capital investments, the capacity that we had considering we were both working full-time off-farm jobs, and our instability as we found our markets. Without access to the programs and protections through filing a Schedule F almost 10 years ago, it seems impossible that we would be the strong community resource that we are today. And that resource, I want to be clear, is one that still makes too little and sits on too few acres to qualify for most programs. A huge part of the work that we do is teaching folks how to grow their own food, from home growers to new farmers. We don't farm what most people would consider extremely arable land. It's very rocky. It's literally on a rock ledge. It's a steep hill. There's water that flows through the land in extremely inconvenient ways. It's only 2 acres and most of it's forested. It's really not what people would consider farmland. The bonus of that is that it's the best way to show that everyone can grow food right where they are. It's critical that we start to remember our foodways and that folks feel capable to provide for themselves and their communities. A new study just confirmed that small-scale farmers produce more of the rich world's food than previously thought. That isn't news to small farmers like me. In the fight against climate catastrophe and polycrisis, home growers and small farms are the future. Being blocked from access to funding, expertise, and protections, the resilient future that we're building is in peril. The right to grow food and distribute it is an issue that comes up year after year, and we have the chance to get it right and to close the issue once and for all. Last year, the legislature was asked to increase our ability to manage our community's food needs by strengthening the cottage food law. This year, I understand there's a bill up in this session right here in the House Committee for the right to grow gardens because more and more tenants are finding landlords and HOAs are prohibiting small home gardens. We must codify the right to grow food, including the right to raise livestock and sell food products from small operations for everyone, and send the message that further enclosures of the land will not be allowed. Some of our northern neighbors have made great progress on food sovereignty. In November of 2021, Maine became the first U.S. state to constitutionalize the right to food. We can join them in protecting the deeply held heritage of our state, and indeed, we can actually do better. As a regenerative no-till farmer, I need policymakers to understand that land stewardship is more complicated than agriculture for extraction alone. Not all practices that are critical to care for the land are lucrative. Moreover, agriculture at any scale without livestock is not healthy for the land. And food sovereignty without the ability to access or produce healthy, affordable proteins cannot be considered complete. I've heard that restoration of the farmer exemption is top of mind, and I want to thank all of you for your diligence on this critical issue. In addition to restoring those protections, thank you so much for considering the right to grow gardens. It's a really critical bill to be passed in this session. Additionally, I urge you to restore the current guidelines under the RAPs and, I urge you to restore the farm exemption and those protections. And I also urge you to ensure that the current guidelines under the RAPs remain intact. Farmers must be able to file a Schedule F as adequate proof of eligibility. Additionally, the right to grow food free from municipal exemption must be codified for everyone. Thank you. Very happy to take questions.
Thank you. Yeah, questions, Representative Basil.
Yeah, I have a question. So I represent Brookline, which is right next to Newton.
Hi.
I don't know your farm though, so maybe I should visit in the summer or something.
You would love that.
But I have a question. So you just said something, I think I wrote down the quote and I just would like to explain what this means because I haven't ever thought of it this way before.
Yeah.
Agriculture without livestock is not healthy for the land. So tell me about that because that's a new concept for me.
So it's one of like the central tenets of regenerative agriculture is that livestock are included. It's sort of part of closing the loop, closing the nutrient cycle loop. So if we're farming at a large scale with tractors, we're having to put in a lot of fertilizers and a lot of those kinds of things. That's actually not good for the land. It's like actually not a healthy way to manage the land. Other farmers will disagree with me, of course. A lot of farmers are large scale farmers that till the bejesus out of the soil and add a lot of fertilizers and they grow good food and that's great. But that's not what our farm does. We're a no-till farm. And so we believe that closing the nutrient cycle and adding livestock is a critical component to the land, to land management. We use chickens and rabbits for that. And we have previously also had goats. It's an important way, it's a natural way for the land to regenerate. It's a natural way for the nutrient cycle to be closed.
So you
That
use
helps.
the waste from the chickens and rabbits to fertilize the soil.
Yes.
Okay.
And they also graze areas and
Yep.
clear areas of the land that we're might want to put into production or just need to sort of like hold.
Okay. And you didn't really say what do you grow? So you have chickens and rabbits. What else do you do on your farm?
Yeah, so we're a full diversified operation. We have 2 greenhouses. We grow year round. We do like the full slate of like CSA style
You
vegetables.
sell at the farmer's market or?
We don't. So right now, our business model, all of our food goes to food shelves, nonprofits, community organizations so that we get paid like a fair wage. And also so that people can't afford our food can eat our food.
So do you partner through Vermonters Feeding Vermonters or what?
So in the past, we have gotten Vermonter Feeding Vermonter funding
Yeah.
through both the Townsend Community Food Shelf and
Yeah.
also through Moonscape Farm, which runs like the Retreat Community Food Project in Brattleboro. They haven't gotten exactly Vermonters Feeding Vermonters funding every year,
Yeah.
but we have had that funding in the past.
Thanks.
Yeah, great.
Representative Bartholomew.
You mentioned action that Maine had taken. Can you say any more about that?
I'm sorry?
You mentioned action Maine had taken.
Yeah.
More about that?
Yeah, it was really exciting. So you could obviously look up the exact language of the law. But they passed a law in 2021 saying that everyone had the right to, it says the right to food, but essentially it's the right to grow food. So they're able to save seeds, grow their own food, like manage all of their stuff. The reason that I was saying that we can kind of expand on their law and do better than what they're doing, it also, I think also maybe has some cottage food law protections and stuff. So it's pretty comprehensive. It's really large scale. And terrific. But the reason that I was saying that we could do better is because it's plant only. That law is plant only. So it's just for growing, your tomatoes, your cucumbers, whatever, making pickles, making sauce. Yeah, it's for literally everyone in the state. So everyone, no matter where they are, no matter what they're doing, no matter what their intention is, they have an absolute right to have their garden or a small farm or any kind of production. And so it's totally achievable for us to include this language.
Yeah. And I think you said it's actually, they amended the Constitution, so
Yes.
it's right there in there.
Yeah. And the great thing about that is then they're not going to go back and relitigate, which is part of my point is like, you poor folks are so pressed already. And then there you are every year, we're asking again for more clarity, for more legislation. The thing that's so terrible about what happened with the Supreme Court decision is that it put into litigation something that it was not necessary to have litigated. We had very clear understanding of the law for a really long time. And once that vacuum kind of opened up, now you've had all kinds of people lobbying for all kinds of different things, removing the $2,000 limit for farmers, or getting rid of Schedule F, or doing this or doing that. And it's, everybody has valid concerns, but it's like, you know, if we can just codify the right to grow food, if we can just reinstate farmer exemption, like if we can just codify those things so that they're not relitigatable, then you guys don't have to keep doing this, you know?
We are continuing to have conversations about that topic, and later today we'll be working on it some more. So yeah, stay tuned. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Yes.
Okay, that.
Hi, everyone.
Hi.
My name is Kirsten Tyler. I'm from Westford. This is my first time at the State House. So as I said in the Senate meeting, I'm very nervous. So I'm going to read my little testimony, and please cut me off if you have any questions during it, or we can talk more fluidly at the end. I am going to talk about municipal exemption today, RAPs, the right to grow food, and rabbits. So again, thank you so much for the opportunity to testify today and taking the time to listen to farmers and homesteaders on these issues. I'm here today to ask you to restore the longstanding municipal exemption for farms that was lost under the recent Supreme Court ruling, and establish a right to grow food that includes reasonable allowances for livestock, plants, and other forms of food production. So my family owns just 1 acre of land in Westford. We lease another 10 acres. So we grow a ½ acre of certified organic vegetables, and we raise pasture-based rabbits on 5 acres of that leased land. Rocky Hill Farm is a small farm, but it is a big part of our livelihood. We are relatively new farmers. When we decided to start farming in 2020, we were living on rented land. And like many Vermonters, we wanted to buy a larger parcel, but the housing market being extremely expensive and limited caused us to stay renting for quite a number of years. We rented for several years before we were finally able to buy, but we could only afford 1 acre. And while renting, we wanted to raise livestock for meat, but we couldn't invest in permanent infrastructure like fencing or a barn because we didn't own that land. After extensive research, we found that meat rabbits could be possible for us renters with minimal startup. Rabbits are uniquely suited to small parcels of land. They are quiet and docile. They can be raised in small hutches or small movable pens on a very small amount of pasture or even a lawn. They don't create the same noise or odor concerns often associated with other livestock, and biologically, they are incredibly efficient. A decent number of rabbits can be raised responsibly on a super small footprint, and in my experience, one could easily raise 65 pastured rabbits on just 1 acre, which could feed a family of 4 for like a year. 323 explicitly protects small backyard poultry flocks from municipal regulation, and I'm asking you to ensure that small livestock like rabbits are explicitly included in reasonable livestock protections as well. So we started with just 2 females and a male. We were off and running. Now we raise over 300 pastured rabbits a year for restaurants in our region. Rabbits were our entry point into farming because they are practical for small land bases and for folks who don't have secure permanent land. Since then, we have had to move our entire farm twice. So we rented a couple of properties before we purchased. Our little livestock made it possible for us to be movable, and protections for agriculture made it possible for us to move our farm onto several properties. Like most new farms, we started very small. When we started, we made under $5,000, and we were growing vegetables and raising livestock on less than 1 acre. Farming businesses take time to build markets, infrastructure, and production capacity, and small acreage and low revenue are not signs that something is not a farm, but in my experience, they are how farms begin. That's why the change to raise the required agricultural practices income threshold from 2,000 to 5,000 really concerns me. If farms under 1 acre or making less than 5,000 annually lose protection, you are not just redefining the eligibility of a farm, but you are also raising the drawbridge or the fence in front of the next generation of farmers, which included us when we first started. Moreover, restoring the municipal exemption for farms is essential. Without it, municipalities could regulate farm through zoning in ways that create uncertainty and instability. If regulatory authority shifts to municipalities, that means decisions about livestock will ultimately rest with local select boards. Select board membership can change every few years, and as the boards change, local ordinances or priorities also change. And a farmer could be allowed to raise small livestock under one board in a downtown area and then face new restrictions under the next. That level of uncertainty makes it extremely difficult to plan, invest, or build a stable farm business. It also creates inconsistency across town lines. So you would see the same differences. You could farm in one town and then need to move to a different town, and maybe you couldn't necessarily farm there. Farming requires long-term planning, but a patchwork system subject to frequent local change makes long-term stability nearly impossible. So finally, I will finish. Rabbits are a healthy, efficient source of protein. They can be raised humanely on a very small acreage. They contribute to diversified, self-sufficient farmsteads. They are familiar to many new American communities. They are part of a resilient local food system, and they should be explicitly included in protections for livestock under the right to grow food. I urge you to restore the municipal exemption for farms and to create a right to grow food that includes reasonable livestock protection so that small farms like mine can continue to contribute to Vermont's food system. And again, thank you very, very much. Do you have any questions?
Thank you, Kirsten.
Comments, questions?
Yeah, questions. Now, I should have mentioned, maybe it became clear that we have one member of the committee who's joining us on Zoom, and we don't see him at the moment, but I think he's still there. So, yeah, committee questions. Representative O'Brien.
We often hear how small ruminants are difficult to process given the sort of slaughterhouse scene in Vermont. So with rabbits, I assume, do you do it yourself? Like how do you get one of your ready for restaurant rabbits, to a restaurant where it's served as a meal?
Yeah, I'm really glad you asked that because I wanted to talk about this, but I didn't think that I would have time. So I skipped over it. So to sell to restaurants, legally, we are required to have our rabbits slaughtered at a USDA approved source. And right now there is one in Vermont for rabbits. That is Phil Brown, Phil Brown's Meats. I think it's in Groton. I forget, it's an hour from me. Glover, yes, thank you. So that facility has been processing rabbits for a number of years. And the only one that I know of in Vermont, we've done a lot of extensive research on this, growing rabbits for 6 years now. He has said that he doesn't really want to do it anymore. And so he's sort of hinted that he's doing us a favor this year in slaughtering our rabbits. So next year we will face challenges, I think, in this realm. So yes, having more options would be necessary for us to continue raising rabbits. Yeah.
Is the same true if you want to sell rabbit to a neighbor or direct to consumers?
No, we can slaughter on farm if we want to sell direct to consumers, but raising over 300 rabbits a year is something that we don't want to do. They're relatively easy to slaughter, but we just don't have the capacity with what we're doing on our farm. So we really appreciate the slaughterhouse and the nicely packaged rabbits that we receive and then can put in the freezer to sell over the course of the year.
Representative Boston?
Well, I was just going to ask, so if this one place that processes rabbits goes out of business, we passed a bill a few years ago that people that raise chickens could cut up their chickens and sell them in whatever configurations they want. Would you guys be interested in slaughtering and selling your own rabbits? Or it sounds like maybe that would be cumbersome for you. So is your hope that a new butcher will come forward or that you might be able to sell after butchering your own process?
A little bit of both. So we don't want to slaughter and butcher on farm. We would rather have that happen off farm. So we have talked to Maplewind Farm, for instance, to see if they would be interested in opening up a rabbit slaughter mini facility. And we are reaching out to other slaughter facilities to see if they would be interested in offering rabbits as well. The thing is, rabbit farming is still pretty new in Vermont. There are a lot of very, very small scale operations, but not a lot of, actually, I think we're one of the only commercial operations. I know that Phil Brown had a commercial operation, and I think that's sort of slowing down right now, but I know that other people are interested in selling to restaurants, but they don't live anywhere near the slaughter facility, and we just happen to. So we do want that to happen off farm. However, we would also be interested in opening up a small facility that could be approved on our farm and just hire in some folks to do, we do 3 or 4 slaughters a year, So that would be very helpful to have something that would allow us to cut up rabbits. Right now, we're not allowed to cut up rabbits at all. We have to sell whole, and that's to retail or to wholesale restaurants or to direct to consumer. We have to sell whole. So yes, parting rabbits would be would be very interesting to us. We've had people actually ask if they can like purchase legs or something like that.
Right.
But,
It sounds exactly like what we had with the chicken issue.
Yeah.
Except we just weren't thinking about rabbits.
We were thinking
Yeah.
about rabbits and I believe so this goes back a couple of years and others in the room might be able to help us remember, but the issue there was just that Vermont law didn't go even as far as federal law. So federal law was fine with having up to a certain point anyway, slaughter and parting of chickens on farms. But maybe it was unique to poultry and doesn't apply to rabbits.
it doesn't apply to rabbits. Mhm. Yeah.
And that's federal law too, presumably. So we might think it's a great idea, but we'd have to get our friends in Washington to go along with it, which isn't out of the question, I suppose. I see Representative Nelson has a hand up.
Yeah. Thank you, Chair. Kristen, this is your first time in the State House and you're nervous. I can't wait to see when you get sure of yourself. You did a great job. Yeah, Phil Brown. He's about 65 years old or soon to be, a paraplegic, got his back broken in a tragic car accident about 1983. He has done a wonderful job and risen above all challenges and met them head on with a great determination. And he is timing out, unfortunately. And this is a problem we have, Kristen, in the whole state for any slaughter that we'd like to do in the state of Vermont under license. And it's something that we need to look at more and maybe create more of a pasture slaughter, they call it over in New Hampshire.
Mobile.
And I understand that you may not want to do that, but other people may want to do that, which would take what, open up some capacity for our Vermont slaughterhouses. Also, we need to look at how they're handling it. There's an issue with rendering, and we need to look at that in our committees, and maybe we should start looking at it this year. It's probably too late to get any bill across, but to allow for composting off-site of our small slaughterhouses for their rendering, because it's become a terrific issue in the state of Vermont. But thank you for bringing these concerns, and I appreciate everything you had to say.
Thank you very much.
All right, thank you, Kirsten. One more question.
Or a statement, maybe not so much a question. I farm in St. Albans. I used to live 3 miles from St. Albans. They're all around me now. My farm's conserved. I had a 50-unit development move in on the edge of me. And I might have been unfair because I was on the select board, but when those house lots were sold, every one of them in their deed told them they were buying next to a farm. And they didn't. So they knew it when the farm was purchased, that there might be some smell and they called it the Bergen clause, and it's still in there. So I haven't been bothered, so.
Yeah.
Interesting. Thank you.
Thanks.
Go to Mary.
Morning, everyone. I'm Mary Linehan. I'm from Stratford. I'm a small land farmer. We have a very large garden and either lambs or beef, depending on what we feel like growing that year. I'm also a member of the select board. Thank you for your service, but I'm not representing the select board. I don't have that authority. I would like to, however, give you some of my current experience on the select board and how I think this issue will come across for us. First of all, if you don't know Stratford, we're two small villages broken up by about a 3-mile wavy road that goes through several farms. I live on an old farm right next to the center of the South Stratford Village, and I would be very sad to see that I can't grow my cows anymore, which keep my land open, which we use then for skiing and other kinds of activities. So I mean, I think that even if you're not growing to sell, keeping land open in Vermont, especially in Stratford, is very important. There's just not that much of it. I, as a member of the select board, have watched over the last 7 years, 7 special small scale agricultural activities start. They're almost always young people on very limited pieces of land. Many of them would fall within what has been mapped as the 1A. Yeah. So yes, which I have to say, I was on the select board when that map was drawn up with True Rivers. It was done by our planning commission. They worked really hard on it. I don't think they had any idea that it would be used to determine whether or not farming could take place. And had they may have looked at it differently. I look at that map now and I think, bad choices. They were choices. They were choices by informed members of the community looking at the issues that they were talking about, which was housing at the time. Whether or not farming came up, I can't be sure. I wasn't in on all those meetings, but I can tell you that when it came to the select board, we had absolutely no sense that this would impact on farming opportunities. We love our farms. We want them to stay open. We want small farmers to come in. This is a livelihood issue for us. This is a self-preservation issue for us. As a member of the select board during COVID, we were very, very pleased to be able to say that we had a creamery. We had 2 CSAs. We had plenty of meat in the freezer, and we had vegetables being grown everywhere. This was really important and valuable to us because we all thought, and especially in the early days, that we would be unable to go to town. We are 15, 17 miles from the closest grocery store. We have to live within our means when there's a pandemic. And I can tell you there will be another. I'm a public health professional. So we were uniquely well positioned. And I think that our town came away thinking we would like to make sure that that continues. So I would like to also argue for an exemption for municipalities, because again, towns with select board members who are well-meaning, but not always agricultural specialists and definitely not always farmers, they are doing the best they can. They are using the legislation that becomes available to them through their quick calls to VLCT and perhaps an effort to read what's online. We're not lawyers for the most part. And we are balancing the expectations of our community and what we believe to be our understanding, a proper understanding of the law. And we don't always get it right. And I would also like to reiterate what Kristen said, select board's turnover. We have 5 members. This year, 4 dropped off. I can tell you that for the next year, they will be the new 4 members will be learning how to be select board members. If these issues come up, it's very hard for them to analyze them thoroughly and not just give a knee-jerk response to whatever the state wants. And we don't want to go against the state, but sometimes the decisions that are made are not in our best interest. So I would just like to, again, say that select board members are really well-meaning. They can't always understand these issues. We really depend on the Department of Agriculture, and we would continue to like them to be making these decisions, not us. I think that's all I have. So if you have any questions.
Questions? Representative Byrd.
Tier 1A, is that?
Tier 1B, sorry.
Okay, so you're mapping Tier 1B. It's
Right through the center of the town where I can tell you, I can count 3 small scale producers that would be affected. Now, I know that select boards can decide not to do that, but again, the churn, the incentives that select boards have are sometimes in opposition, and they may not well understand the impact of what they're doing. So I would say that's really not a great role for select boards, despite their responsibility for zoning.
Thank you. We've heard, and the testimony we've had from the Land Use Review Board has reminded us that nothing has been approved yet, that there have been proposed maps in some counties or some districts, but nothing has been finalized yet, for whatever that's worth. But it's interesting. So we're also hearing that in these areas where towns might have said, we want an exemption because we really want to promote housing there.
Yep.
Then we're hearing, oh, but that's might be good ag land. So there's obviously a conflict there. And in your experience in your community, can you give us any insight into why would that good ag land have been included in an area that would be that we want housing here?
Because we have so little cleared land, primarily. The land that's cleared is either an existing farm that has been maintaining its hayfields or has cattle grazing, or it is the midsection of the town that surrounds the road going through, and it is where there are houses, there are also farms. And so, you know, the rest is all woods. We don't have a lot of clear land.
Thank you. Representative Lipsky.
Thank you, Mayor. Do either of the Stratford villages have municipal sewer?
No, everyone has their own septic here.
So, and that's one of the key criteria for tier 1A or B.
See, yeah.
And so I underscore, and we have not just Act 181 that's challenging for, but this Taft Street decision as for everyone in this room at the table as well from the side. It's presented serious threats to, I love how you captured Stratford's sustainability or resilience during that pandemic, which experienced different communities, but theirs was poignant.
Are those, is that good ag land that is possibly going to be ending up in a tier 1B? Is that currently being farmed?
Yes, and it may not be commercial farms but everybody in town grows their own food in their front yard.
Mhm.
That is within the 1B plat, part of the map. I mean, yeah, I mean, the fact is that if an uninformed or newly elected select board team comes on board and says, oh yeah, let's adopt this, it's great, it's, you know, we can have more housing, you're going to boot out a lot of people's ability to grow their own food right next to the school. I mean, these are like really small plots, but the excess food goes to the food shelf. It is shared with helping hands. It is given to neighbors. It is given to elderly people who can no longer grow their own field. This is the way the town takes care of itself. We do not want in any way to restrict anybody's ability to grow food, but frankly, I don't want anybody to tell me I can't have 2 cows or 10 chickens. I like the fact that my neighbor down the road on the road grows chickens and I get to buy her eggs. I don't want to see any of that go away. And I don't think anyone would purposefully do it, but I think there are inadvertent, unintended consequences when select boards are asked to make decisions that they don't fully understand the implications of.
Chairman,
Representative Nelson has had his hand up for a bit, so let's let him jump in here.
Thank you, Chair. No, you're exactly right. And just as administrations change in Washington, things will change. Things will change in our small towns in Vermont. And you're right, select boards can change. We have a large dairy farm, which is probably now going to be in tier 1B. And we shouldn't have to fall under the whims of changing school boards, and we need to really get this right to the municipal regulation and get tier and make sure that agriculture stays out of Act 250 wherever it is. So thank you for your comments. I really appreciate them.
Representative Lipsky.
I just note on Stratford, many of the folks on this committee may not know that it's probably the home Olympic.
My parents were across the road. Yep, grew up in there.
Equestrians. Talking about that's
The gold winning team
Yeah.
in 1976. 4 of the members came from Stratford.
but just because knowledge matters. They don't just go-
We don't want our farm to go away. Yeah.
We can always count on Representative Lipsky to make sure we're well informed on Olympic.
Usually it's winter sport, not summer day.
Representative O'Brien.
That was what I was going to say. I mean, for a town that still feels agricultural, it's really the equine has been doing it, because when I went to school there with you, how many dairy farms were there? And now there's just Stratford Organic Green.
That's right. There were 4 on the main road, and they're there as farms, but they are dramatically reduced.
Are you a 10 acre or?
I'm an 18 acre, so just under the thing. Oh, the town. You mean 10 acre?
Zoning?
We have zoning. We just rolled out the unified bylaws, and let me tell you, that is not fun. Terrible. Like, we are having so many lawsuits over this, which again, I worry that this would only add to the town's strife over how to restrict use of land.
I think we need to move ahead here. Do you have two more?
I think we have Buster on the screen. I just want to offer one point of clarification related to Mary's testimony. I serve on the Two Rivers Regional Planning Commission as commissioner representing youth at large. And while Stratford is not attached to the septic system, the regional maps, they map village areas, and in theory, any village area in the long run could apply at one day become Tier 1B, and the zoning authority issue and where agriculture may be or may not, it's not just a matter of Tier 1A and B, but it's really a matter of the map in general. So in the map, there's going to be rural areas that are going to be designated for agriculture and forestry use. And towns, based on the regional plan, are going to be incentivized to basically develop the village centers where there's agriculture and to push agriculture out to the green areas that are more clearly designated in the plan on the map as suitable for agricultural use. And a town like Stratford that does have zoning based on the select board and how it might evolve over time, that could lead to zoning ordinances regardless of Tier 1A and B status that in fact push agriculture and food growing practices out. So just a point of clarification on that. But I think Buster's on the
And then after Buster,
and then we have one more in the room if there's time.
okay, what about Michael?
And Michael is. And Michael is not.
All right.
I would prefer shit.
All right, well, why don't we have Buster next?
Okay. And he might need a clear time.
Okay.
He's currently muted and got his camera off.
Maybe we start with Michael.
Okay, why don't we start with Michael, and then if Buster's available later today, we could also, he might be, we can have him speak to us again, or, yeah, okay. Good morning, Michael.
Good morning, Representative Durfee, and thank you all so much for taking the time to hear us out. You all have seen me in the past in my work with the Bennington County Conservation District. I'm largely taking that hat off today, and I'll be speaking to you all as a farmer and a constituent here in West Arlington, Vermont, where on our small diversified farm, Battenkill Groves, we raise sheep, poultry, chestnuts, and annual produce, berries. We do a lot, grow a lot of different crops, and I have a formal educational background as an agroecologist. I wanted to talk about two primary issues today. The first being the right to grow. The second being the Act 181 changes. You all have heard a lot of testimony about the more urban core areas, but I'm going to focus more on, if my dog will stop trying to turn my laptop off. I wanted to be up there in person with y'all, but my lambs started dropping first thing this week. So pardon my rather disheveled appearance. I haven't slept more than 2 hours at a stretch in like a week and a half. So starting first with the right to grow, I want to concur with the sentiment around rabbits. Bleeding into the Bennington County Conservation District side of things, Representative Durfee, I sent you our official position regarding rabbits. We wrote that before we knew about the Schedule F and reduction or increase in current use levels. So we also think that those should not be incorporated in the session. But we've already talked about rabbits, and I want to focus the conversation on mushrooms. And as an agroecologist and as someone who got my start 15 years ago in a small suburban backyard plot in Portland, Oregon, raising rabbits and mushrooms, I want to emphasize the really critical importance of the fungal kingdom in a resilient local food system in a way that I don't think has been brought before this committee in the past. Indoor mushroom cultivation especially is an extremely efficient, high value add urban agricultural practice that is already occurring throughout the state at the small to medium scale. Here in Arlington, we have an incredible example of this with Soul Connection Farm, Pat and Cassie McLaughlin, who had hoped to make it today, but their kids have had some kind of croup for the last month, and they haven't been able to get away from that. So I'm speaking a little bit on on that. They are in the Schedule 1B zone, I believe, and produce a truly incredible amount of food out of a basement, utilizing a waste stream from a local sawmill. So they're not only helping the state meet our collective food security goals that have been spelled out in the Vermonters Feeding Vermonters plan, the food security roadmap in the state agricultural plan, to focus and produce more of our own food locally. But they're also helping the state meet its universal recycling goals, that waste stream and waste streams like it would otherwise be diverted into a landfill or simply allowed to decompose on site. And by having these small scale, sometimes in a basement, sometimes in a shed, mushroom farms allows communities to support businesses that divert a waste stream, provide a steady flow of really healthy proteins and other important nutrients out of something that would otherwise be completely wasted. And especially in these urban, for as much as we can call a lot of these places urban, agricultural activities, I feel personally, and the organization I work for, even though I'm not speaking for them right now, feels as though this is a really critical component to long-term food sovereignty in communities. The Soul Connection Farm example, that farm stand, especially while the Dollar General was shut down in town because the heat didn't work, other than Stewart's, was pretty much the only place that anyone within the town of Arlington could go and buy fresh produce. The closest next option would be in Manchester or Bennington, which is about a 30-minute drive and is very difficult to access on public transportation. So just want to, if no one has brought indoor mushroom cultivation to your attention before, I just wanted to bring it to your attention now because it's something that's really a missing piece of this discussion that I have noticed going on statewide. Also, yay rabbits. Can't say enough good things about all the experiences I've had with rabbit production. I wouldn't be where I am today owning a piece of ground and being able to farm at scale if I hadn't started with rabbits the way that Kirsten was discussing. And then on the issue of increasing the income requirements for farms through the required agricultural practices, one of the main reasons that we, me, my family, and my partner chose to purchase land in Vermont on a non-ag conserved land that was super vulnerable to multi-use property development, outside of the village core, and pay through the nose for the Welcome to Vermont tax, was because we have two parcels, one in New York and one in Vermont, just across the state line. And when we were looking at comparing where do we want to really focus our efforts and energy in starting this business and scaling it up, New York versus Vermont, a huge part of that decision was the low barrier to entry required to start being designated a farm within the state of Vermont. In New York, it's closer to 10. It might have even been increased to $15,000 per year in revenue flowing through the business. In Vermont, it was 2,000. So for us, that part put Vermont up in our estimation, because under the current RAPs, in order to be considered a small farm, we had to have a minimum of 15 sheep. We purchased those sheep, we got breeding stock on top of that. And even with, it was a terrible year for grazing, as you all know, but even with that small herd meeting those required agricultural practices, we just barely cleared that $2,000 threshold. I think we netted a total of $2,300 off of those 15 sheep, just because the grazing year was so bad. And if that had happened in New York, we would have been a year behind schedule in getting our current use appraisal done. It really would have negatively impacted us, and we would have had to invest a lot more money up front in fencing, in stock, in watering infrastructure, in all of these things that would have made it prohibitive to try and purchase a property and start a business that's helping meet a lot of the state's both food security and conservation goals. Moving on to Act 181, this was another key consideration that we looked into when we were deciding on purchasing a property with a home site. And under the previous iteration of Act 250 that allowed for much more flexible construction of on-farm buildings, accessory dwelling units, et cetera, Vermont really stood head and shoulders above New York in our ability to work with the Agency of Agriculture to build barns, potentially with farm worker housing located above the barn for myself and my partner to be able to move out of the main house and get our family going. And under these new restrictions, we're having to very seriously consider once 2027 rolls around and all of these new regulations come into full force and effect for the tier 3 areas, do we keep going in Vermont? Or do we try and shift our production and our land acquisition and leasing strategy now that we've established in Vermont for a home site? Do we not continue trying to increase production in the state of Vermont? Because I'm looking right now at a parcel up in Rupert. It's about 120 acres that would really allow us to expand our production and make it a long-term viable business that would take me, hopefully retire me out of the district manager role at some point. And I would pay roughly $3,200 an acre for that ground. It's relatively degraded. Or I could go hop right across the state line into New York, where I'm now going to be facing really similar restrictions on construction, on road input, but pay less than half the per acre cost for the land itself. So as we're all struggling with this issue of needing young people to move into the state, people moving out of the state because of lack of opportunity, I feel as though it's really important to emphasize that in my over the last 4 years, I've met with hundreds of producers all over this state. The young beginning farmers have a very typical track. They, like you've heard today, will start very small, sometimes within a village area so that they can get something started, and then they'll either lease or purchase land in a more rural setting to expand their operations. But if these changes go into effect, the removal of Schedule F, increasing the amount of revenue required, increased zoning regulations, having to run plans through a much more rigorous and expensive process, you're going to have even fewer young people moving into the state. And every aspect of what the state is trying to do, what the Vermont brand is of building local food systems that can rely on local food sovereignty, starts to go away very quickly. So I respectfully submit that as a state and as a now citizen and taxpayer of the state, that we not continue to shoot ourselves in the foot and discourage people like Pat and Cassie McLaughlin, people like myself, people like Kirsten, people like all the young small farmers who've moved to this state with a dream and not a lot of money in the bank account, but nevertheless persist and start those businesses and feed their communities. Stand with us, and I know that that's the intention, and make sure that we are able to realistically and reasonably follow the rules, but follow rules that allow for us to be successful and start, because the starting is the hardest part. I'll pause for questions. I had a script. I went off of it really horribly, which just tends to be my way. And Representative Durfee, if other folks are interested, knowing the caveat that the district also supports rural Vermont in their quest to keep the RIP requirements at $2,000, and everything else that's been said here, our fully fleshed out argument on why Right to Grow should be looked at through an agroecological lens and a whole diet lens, rather than only looking at plants or only looking at livestock, looking at it as a systemic whole. I'd be happy to distribute that position paper, or Representative Durfee can share it with you all since I sent it to him.
Yeah, feel free to send it to the committee. That's fine. I think we've already posted it, but doesn't hurt to have a second round. I want to note that we are a bit over time. B, we haven't had a break. Some of us haven't gotten out of our chairs in 2 hours. So, I know we had Buster, and I don't know if Buster is listening in, but I'm hoping we can maybe have him this afternoon. I know he was available this afternoon.
He's told me that too.
Okay. A question or two, just for Michael. Let's start with,
Just a comment. What these towns, we're all talking houses, we don't have. A lot of these younger, I'm like 30 years old, I've been an ex-select board member, been there forever. When you take, if it's an acre or 100 acres, you put a house on. And they go, we gotta go to the grand list. But that house needs fire protection, that house needs a road plowed. That house sends 2.2 kids to school. And it costs a lot of money for a town. And the push is to get more and more housing. But in the end, the tax rate will go through the roof. In open land in St. Albans town, we have hundreds of thousands of acres farmland. And if that disappears, it's going to be very hard to live here.
Not good for the state.
Yeah. I knew I'd get bad when I do rotational grazing. I have paddocks along the road. When the car pulls up the driveway, wants to know if it can buy subdivision number 3.
Representative Bartholomew.
Once we get past crossover and hopefully find some time, I'd like to petition for a primer on mushroom farming.
Yeah, that would be useful. We've talked about mushrooms on this committee before. So. Representative Boswell.
Yeah, that's actually just what I was going to say. Michael, I appreciate you bringing up the mushrooms. It's true, we don't hear about that very often here. Although 2 years ago, we did the Vermont State Mushroom Bill. And we had lots and lots and lots of mushroom testimony here. But in the last 2 years since then, we haven't. So I would love to hear more about that. And I do think it's an important resource.
There may be some ambiguity too, as far as how the state classifies or interprets mushroom growing and agriculture.
I can speak to that briefly. Currently, outdoor mushroom farming is really highly encouraged. It's available for grant programs like the Working Lands Enterprise Board. However, indoor mushroom farming, which is one of the few rare forms of controlled environment agriculture that consistently turns profit, and there's a multi-billion-dollar and growing industry around it that's accessible to producers at a small scale at a commodity rate that's generates a livelihood with dignity. That level of activity, the indoor mushroom cultivation that we view and I view as really critical, is not considered an agricultural activity. It's almost treated the same way that cannabis is. In a lot of ways, it's excluded from all state grant programs. There's no technical assistance available for it in the state outside of maybe myself. I'm the only one that I'm aware of that gives technical assistance on indoor mushroom cultivation statewide. And the consideration around waste management and integrating and encouraging small scale local mushroom cultivation as a waste management technique, I don't think has ever been addressed. So I'd be happy to come back and talk about that some more.
Yeah, I think that would be great. And I think that is something that we could try and tackle this year. Yeah, after even after crossover. Yeah. All right. I want to say thank you to everybody who testified and those who didn't testify also for joining us and helping us better understand concerns and hearing what you had to say. So thank you. We will take a short break. Not too long because we have another witness who may have already joined us online. Okay, could you?
It's a good email, but.
Okay, well, to our next witness will be 5 minutes.
Sure, if you have seen it or not, and it's actually kind of changing as